Andy Hoare. Welcome to Friday 15. We're rocking it out today. Yes, I love this new music, man. I'm feeling it. 2025. We're here at Master B2B for our Friday 15 podcast. My name is Brian Beck. I'm here with Andy Hoare, my partner in our Master B2B Thought Leadership Series and community. Today we got some cool topics. Welcome, Andy, to the show.
Good to be here. Your house is still there. I'm going to check every week until the wildfires are gone.
I think you're going to need to, man. Yeah, it's really crazy. The number of houses destroyed out here in Southern California from this wildfires. Over 10,000 homes just a few miles from where I live. So really hitting close to home, man. It's sad. It's sad. But, we'll keep it upbeat today. But thank you for checking on me. So, folks, we have some, of course, as usual, we have some awesome breaking news. And, of course, what does it have to do with today? Well, Amazon. So Amazon, Andy, if you remember, a few years, I think last year at some point, the U.S. Consumer Products Safety Commission had won a ruling against Amazon saying, hey, stuff that's sold through your site by third-party sellers, you're responsible for. They classified them as a distributor. And when they did that, that made Amazon responsible for stuff sold as a marketplace, not stuff that Amazon buys in its Vendor Central program, but things that a seller like you and I could set up an account and sell a coffee mug. And if that coffee mug goes to your house and, it breaks and spills hot coffee and destroys you somehow, you Amazon are now responsible for that, even though you never owned the product, Amazon. So there's been an update here. Labeled as a distributor, Amazon gives hazardous product remediation orders. Amazon must issue a full refund in the amount of the purchase price to any consumer who submits a proof of destruction or disposal of a subject product. That's just one thing they have to do. There's a whole series of things Amazon now has to do to comply with this ruling. What do you think?
Yeah, it's 400,000 products that are subject to this order. Stuff like carbon monoxide detectors, hair dryers without electrocution protection. So let's say somebody ships somebody a hair dryer and the tag falls off. That technically will qualify as something that doesn't have an indication of electrocution protection. And then Amazon had nothing to do with it. I'm not defending Amazon here, but all they did was facilitate the sale between two third parties, right?
Right.
And they could be subject for recalling that product and a legal liability associated with it, and so on and so forth. Now, that hasn't happened yet. I'm not an expert on the recall process, but I think there's another level of scrutiny here. Like if you're familiar with a meat packing distributor, if they distribute some food that has salmonella, they have to remove it from the shelves. They have to take full responsibility for it. This is the direction this is headed in for Amazon, which is probably why Amazon's founder and CEO, Jeff Bezos, was in Washington this week. It's also why he owns a $30 million house outside of DC, little known fact.
Right.
All these guys, and this is really probably the bigger breaking news, is all these guys in tech are in DC trying to avoid regulatory scrutiny for the next 4 years. And I bet something like this is right in the crosshairs.
No question. To me, Andy, this ruling, I spend a lot of time with Amazon thinking about it with my firm in SEBA, as you know. And, to me, the bigger issue here for Amazon is the fact that it could open up lawsuit liability, not from the federal government, but from people who get product where there's some liability, something happens, and they now have a legal framework by which to sue Amazon. So, yeah, it's going to be fascinating to see what happens here. We'll keep an eye on this for you folks. But our topic today, need to move into that. This was a hot one, Andy. We posted this on LinkedIn, and we got just a tremendous amount of comments. We're going to go through some of those. Now, the question is e-commerce percentage of sales a good indicator of digital success? This is a big question. I mean, as an operator, I used to use this metric all the time. Hey, how much revenue are we getting from e-commerce for the business? And it's, easy to measure, and, is it the right measure? And, if you think about key metrics or KPIs that operators and digital leaders can use and what translates into ROI, ultimately you're looking for things like increased revenue, lift of revenue, or even shift into, onto online channels, decreasing your cost to serve, right? So by facilitating a more efficient transaction using e-commerce, and increase customer satisfaction. Of course, things like customer satisfaction scores, NPS scores, all these things can demonstrate ROI So how does this metric, sort of fit into this landscape, Andy, of KPIs and value and return on investment calculations and just justifying, investments? I mean, I think that's part of the goal here is for companies or leaders to say, hey, I'm generating a return for the business. So this metric is an easy one, but is it the right one? And there's a lot, right, Andy? You found a whole bunch of metrics.
Yeah, when I was back in my Forrester days, I wrote some research about this, and I remember sort of surveying people to figure out what they thought were the most important metrics. This was years ago, and what I remember most from it is that the list was about 30 line items long,
Right.
and grouped into different categories, which is why the slide you just showed about, increasing revenue, decreasing costs, customer satisfaction. Those to me are the three big buckets. But you can make a really compelling argument that there are several more. These are just a few. Operational efficiencies. I mean, we could go on and have a whole podcast about that. Sales team effectiveness. And this is beyond sales enablement. This is stuff like, people referring to the website to figure out if they got the right product, or for price updates. Cross-channel influence. Wow, this is an entire podcast on its own. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a moment. Share of wallet, your favorite.
Yes.
And then, of course, the biggie is customer lifetime value. I mean, ultimately, that's what you're looking for, right? But wait, there are still more, right? Ones like conversion rate, percent of transaction volume. I just threw a smattering here. Percentage of transaction volume versus percentage of revenue. Ricardo Caruso mentioned this. He said he didn't percent of sales, because in a B2B environment, that can be deceptive. He thinks a more effective one can be percentage of transaction volume. Again, there's a whole other conversation about that. There's profitability per order, AOV. I remember at an insight several years ago that online was kind of different from offline, in that if you see declining AOV, it does not necessarily mean that the business is suffering when there's a digital component, because it could mean that people are ordering more frequently and they're ordering smaller quantities and they're actually happier.
Right.
And the AOV would generally trend down in that scenario, but it's not, the total spend will continue to increase. So that's another one, total spend, right? Online.
Right.
But yeah, there's a ton of these things, and it's incumbent upon every company to figure out which one matters to them. So why is percent of digital penetration of overall sales seemingly the default metric?
Right.
And that's what we posted.
Yeah.
Well, I think there's a couple of reasons why that kind of come to mind for me. One is it's easy. It's easy to say if we have $100 million in total sales and we sold 3 million of them online because we have a paper trail, so to speak, we have cards, then you go, wow, that's easy. It's 3%, right? And early on, and you did this, I'm sure, many B2B e-commerce professionals were justifying their existence by pointing to those numbers and saying,
absolutely,
hey, look, we did 3 million last year. So it kind of became this area where people started resign themselves to this. But it's actually very easy for people to understand. This is also important. Senior executives can understand a number like this. Of our total sales, what percentage are coming through the online channel? Now, there's so many problems with that, like with the word channel in general. But again, it was the default metric because it was the easy one. So we thought, let's see what the state of current thinking is on this. So you posted this on LinkedIn. What'd you find?
I did because Andy, before I reveal the poll, one of the concerns here is that it doesn't fully address the effectiveness. I mean, if you've got customers in traditional channels, right, that are not that need a lot of consultation, that maybe the digital component is not the part of it that is really to Ricardo's point, not the place they want to transact, but it influences the sale. This can be very misleading. So yes, we posted this question on LinkedIn, and man, we got a lot of response. We asked the question, is a percentage of B2B companies' total revenue generated by e-commerce a good measure of success in e-commerce? And it's interesting. No, it can be misleading. Was the majority? Well, the majority by a bit, 58%. 42% still thought that yes, it reveals digital maturity and success. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag. And we went out, Andy, and we solicited these comments. We got people were writing books back to us about this topic. It was fascinating. Here's one. from Deirdre Peters, head of digital e-commerce at Boston Scientific. What did she say, Andy?
Well, she said a lot, and I would encourage people to go look at the thread on LinkedIn where it has everybody's back and forth. But just to summarize, she said she works for Boston Scientific. She's head of digital e-commerce at Boston Scientific. She said, we see so much usage of e-commerce for everything but ordering.
Right.
She said an account may order through e-commerce, but they order more from us due to their usage of e-commerce. She said using some analytics gymnastics, she said things like, they're ordering more because it's tied to better product information, more accurate inventory status, pricing. And then, of course, there's a whole post-order care dimension to this as well. So she's arguing that in their case, a manufacturer with low order volume online has to factor in omni-channel influence, and that you can have a lot of digital success even though you have low order volume because you're influencing things in so many other quote unquote channels. I prefer touch points, but Boston Scientific is making regulated products. It's not like a doctor is going to go online and buy a implantable cardio defibrillator, right? Or a nurse is going to go do that. There's a whole process around which it's done. However, those medical professionals may be using the website to get information about the right kind of device, what the pricing is, if that's even available online. I'm sure it's all contract-based pricing, but you can see the point. It's a reference site. And so her point was, don't narrow it all down to percentage of total e-commerce sales.
Yeah, it's interesting, Andy. I remember talking a few years ago to Matt Wingham at Cardinal Health, who's been a guest of ours on multiple of our events over the years. And Matt told me that, hey, one of the biggest challenges they had was attributing website behavior to the EDI system, because what happened is people would research the product on their website, and find the product, but then go order it through the EDI, order it a different channel or touch point, as you describe it. So yeah, this is a real deal here, and tying the stuff together, as Deirdre says, analytics gymnastics. That's what you'd have to do for some of this to attribute the sales. So we also heard from Dan Stepchew, who's been a guest here on our Friday 15 podcast. He's the director of digital marketing at Zest Dental. He's a VP actually. What he said, he raised a couple of interesting questions. What happens when all up direct sales revenue is flat? Does it mean you've only converted existing customers without making any incremental revenue impact with e-commerce? Or does it mean that you've done your job while maybe the sales team hasn't? He says, his advice, framing e-commerce as the best channel to support demand capture versus demand generation. That's where he's found success. And he says the most profitable approach as far as operating expense is concerned. So the key takeaway here is, there are KPI dependencies here. Be wary of cannibalization, especially when, there's slow sales cycles too. Reacting and assuming that, e-commerce doesn't work just because it doesn't turn into e-commerce orders is something that is very dangerous for companies, and executives need to be aware of that. Dan is acutely aware of that. So he's looking at different ways to measure. So great perspective, Dan. Thank you for your comment. And then we had another comment from Peter Drozda, the senior manager of global business operations at American Orthodontics, which is a leading orthodontics manufacturer based out in Sheboygan. What did he say, Andy?
Well, it's worth reading his whole point here. He said, it's always a tricky number for B2B, especially for us. In our business, I could technically argue that 100% of their sales come from e-commerce, even as even our inside sales enter their orders through it, because that's where the project configurator and customer prescriptions are. Again, it's a medical endpoint. Right. I usually separate into three main buckets: orders via punch-out EDI, orders placed directly from the customer user on our site, and internal user orders. What he's seen is that basically it's all digital is e-commerce. I remember that years ago, 3M had a conversation about this, because one year EDI was part of e-commerce, the next year it wasn't, and the year after that it was again. They couldn't decide what was in and out of kind of e-commerce scope. Peter's point is, you got to define this. When you talk about percent of total sales that are e-commerce, does that include EDI? Does it include e-procurement? And he said, be sure to carefully define what e-commerce actually consists of, because you can't have a measure if you're not sure what's in it.
Yeah, one of the things that drives me nuts, Andy, is when companies say, "Hey, e-commerce," and sorry, some of you manufacturers on the little listening in here do this, but hey, my e-commerce is not just my e-commerce; it's also e-commerce that all my channels do. No, it's not. you're enabling them with e-commerce. You're helping them with improving their e-commerce by giving them better data, syndication, etc. But guys, listen, that's not your e-commerce. You don't own that. Don't claim that. That's fake. Fake news. So anyhow,
I feel like this could be another podcast, and we'll
I
get
mean,
some
it probably could
manufacturers
be,
out
man.
who will probably disagree with you on that one.
Yeah, well, hey, make the argument, man. We're all about making arguments here and disagreeing with one another. So hey,
I think
bring it on.
Peters is going to be on that one for sure.
Probably. So, last comment we'll highlight, and we had a lot more on LinkedIn, but this is a great one from Jeff Mikos, who is with McFadden, and he was formerly with Bed Bath and Beyond and Peapod, so he's been an operator. And he had a number of things he highlighted. He said it's part of the puzzle. And by the way, Jeff, I agree with you. This e-com penetration should be part of the puzzle, but he says I don't believe it's the almighty metric necessarily. Agreed. He goes on, I'd like to lean into adoption and engagement alongside the platform's impact on sales operations. Things like percentage of customers that are registered with an online account. Are they active? E.g., do they log in? And what do they do when they log in? That's perfect. I think this approach makes a lot of sense. At the end of the day, I think this is a metric. You have to put it in the context of your customer and understand, is your customer one that will order via e-commerce, or does e-commerce have a different role? Understand the role that e-commerce and digital plays in the journey. So you've got to do the work first of understanding, the customer base. If somebody needs a highly solutions, you're installing a massive HVAC infrastructure in a building. Well, they're not going to buy the whole infrastructure online necessarily, but digital will play a role in that. And so, kind of the key takeaway here is that it's, e-commerce is systematic. It has a systematic influence. Let's not undercount adoption, sales enablement, customer engagement, and other things as e-commerce as part of e-commerce's impact. Anything you want to add on this one, Andy?
Yeah, it's clear that it depends, like you said, what your customers are using your website for, how they think about digital, and you can have a very successful digital quote unquote business while not selling or transacting online at high volumes, especially if you're a brand manufacturer. You could be supporting the channel. You could be supporting your internal channel with your sales reps and your customer service reps, et cetera. It is the place that people go to get information, and information is the mother's milk of e-commerce. So,
right.
You can't argue that just because you have a low percentage that you're not having success or you're not digitally mature. You can be having success and be digitally mature. I think it's fairly inarguable, though, if you're doing a high level of percentage of total sales online, that you are pretty successful digitally and that you are pretty digitally mature.
Yeah, high correlation for sure. Yes.
Yeah, I can't think of too many situations where that would not be the case, but it's a loose metric, but it's an important one, and it does determine some stuff for sure.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at some of the leaders in MRO and industrial distribution, like Grainger, MSC, folks like that, Fastenal, they have truly invested deeply in this stuff and sophisticated in terms of both their teams, their capabilities, their systems and technology. There's a high level of correlation. The danger, I think, Andy, is for companies that have low percentage or low potential percentage, that they focus on this metric blindly as the only real metric that matters because it's easy. And then you end up not meeting your customers' needs because all you care about is driving them to e-commerce, and that's not effective. So,
yeah. By the way, worth noting quickly that we know it's important because a lot of B2C companies still continue to report it years later. In fact, Carrie and our team pointed out that Bank of America still reports it publicly. I think they're in the 60% range of where their transactions are digitally.
Yeah.
I don't think they would be doing that if they didn't think that it had some value in terms of, investor interest, et cetera, that it shows what kind of company you are and how you think.
Well, and they understand their customer and the fact that their customer wants to transact digitally and interact that way. And so it really starts with an understanding of your customer. All right, we're at Friday 20 here, Andy. We got to make a few quick announcements, folks. Remember that our forum is available and growing every week. We get more folks into our forum. This is where practitioners only. It is an online community where people share ideas and network and ask questions. Again, only practitioners. It's free. Go to our website, Master B2B, look for forum, and you can apply to join us there. Look forward to seeing you there. We have some awesome roundtables. We're traveling the country again, Andy, early this year into the spring. Roundtables coming up in February, Atlanta on February 12th, Dallas on February 19th. If you're in those markets, let us know. Atlanta is, I think we got people falling out of the windows because it's packed, man. And Dallas is
it's oversubscribed. Yeah, it is. But
yeah. Well,
let us know if you want to come.
Yeah, okay. And then Dallas is pretty full too. So let us know. But we'll be in Denver, Cleveland, Minneapolis, Charlotte, Cincinnati, LA, New York City, and St. Louis. So again, all this is on our website. You can register. They are free for practitioners to join us. And we do have opportunities for solution providers as well to join us on a limited basis. So let us know. Just reach out to us directly if you're interested in those opportunities. March 12th, Andy, this is take 3, Master B2B Mindshare Summit, University of Chicago's Gleacher Center. Awesome location. Nobel laureates hanging on the walls. Not literally, it's their pictures. And it's pretty cool, guys. We have an awesome agenda planned. We're already about 80% full. So if you are a practitioner and want to join us, please go to our website and sign up today because it will fill up. Also, we have some opportunities for solution providers to join us there. So reach out to us if you'd like to participate. March 12th. And then finally, I want to remind everyone that our Friday 15 or 20 is available on podcast, on your favorite podcast service, Google, Spotify, Apple, and also on our website and also on YouTube. So you can check us out any of those locations. And exciting session today, Andy. Thanks for joining us. Any final words before we wrap?
No, who would have thought that this would stimulate percentage of digital penetration rate would stimulate such a robust discussion, but it did. So stay tuned for more like this.
Yeah, we're gonna hit another fun one next week. So thanks everyone. We'll see you next time.